And welcome back to another episode of Garage Game Day Sports. I'm your host, as always, Louie. We've got a good one for you today. We want to talk Final Four, an awesome day in women's hoops yesterday, as well as a preview of the women's championship game between LSU and Iowa. Cowboys and Texans. For those of you from the Lone Star State like myself, who's a huge Cowboy fan, we're talking free agency and the draft. Let's see what these teams will do there. And also WrestleMania preview and predictions. It's a two-night event tonight and tomorrow. Got my retro shirt ready to rock and roll. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, drop us a comment. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let's go ahead and get started. The Final Four kicking off this afternoon. We touched up on it on the podcast a couple of days ago. San Diego State, Florida Atlantic get us started with the action at 5:09 p.m. Central. Don't ask me why they get those weird times from. 7:49, or at least the plan for now, is Miami UConn. They'll be the second semifinal to tip. And I want to talk about these games real quick. San Diego State, they've done an exceptional job defensively, first of all. Heading up against Dusty May's Florida Atlantic Owls, they can run you off the court with their dynamic ability. They've got depth. They run a very fast pace. They can score a ton of points. But San Diego State has a penchant of running teams off the three-point line and not letting you get quality shots at all. The last two games, Alabama in the Sweet 16, Creighton in the Elite Eight, those two teams shot a combined 5 for 44 from the three-point range. That is abysmal. I can't even begin to say how bad shooting that is, but that's a huge testament to Brian Dutcher and that Aztec defense. What they can do defensively, they just frustrate teams to no end. And they've got the depth behind it too. They've got about 7 or 8 deep that they run. So Florida Atlantic has a deep team as well, deeper than Creighton. So I think they match up well with them in that aspect. Another interesting tidbit: these two teams, FAU 35-3, San Diego State 31-6. Regardless of the outcome, who wins these two semifinals and who goes on to win the national championship, these two teams will finish first and second in Division I in total wins this year. FAU at 35, SDSU at 31. So huge kudos to Brian Dutcher of the Aztecs and Dusty May of Florida Atlantic. And also want to shout out Jim Larrañaga from Miami, coming back to the Final Four after 17 years. That magical run with George Mason in 06. And then Dan Hurley and the magnificent job he's done with the UConn Huskies, navigating them after a rough patch earlier in the year. All four of these coaches top notch. I just can't wait to see the coaching, the players, I know we don't have the sexy players as we usually do in the past, but I'm really looking forward to the chess match between the coaches, adjustments, stuff like that, the atmosphere. We're not going to have the names that we're going to go and talk about, in the women's Final Four that's going on in Dallas. But I'm really interested because these four teams, everyone has a shot to win. They've all gotten hot at the right time. They all play team-oriented basketball. They're all very deep. So I do like all four teams, and really, truly, anybody can come out of this Final Four with a national championship. So for the Aztecs, for the Aztecs and the Owls, going back to them, big man versus big man. Nathan Mensah for SDSU against Vlad Golden, a Florida Atlantic, is just going to be big men banging down low in the paint. Both these guys know how to get it done. They know how to play in the trenches, grab rebounds, stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And John L. Davis for FAU. He's really stepped it up. The sophomore guard, he's bumped up his points from about 13 to 17 points a game. So I'm looking to see what he does for FAU. And if the three-point shooting, if the Owls can get anything done three-point percentage-wise, don't be afraid to shoot. They've got a ton of guys that shoot at least 35% or greater. And have the volume to back it up. It's not just a small sample size. So the FAU Owls definitely not afraid to shoot three-point ranges, but they will be tested by that Aztec defense. That's a very interesting point of the game that I want to see. Now talking Miami UConn, of course, that's going to be the more marquee game, the bigger names, the high-profile coaches, and just the bigger brands as far as these four go. UConn, of course, nearing that blue blood status, if you want to consider them a blue blood, where it's a team, that's been here before and won national championships. I'm certainly not going to argue with that. They're looking for their 5th title since 99, their first since 2014. They've had a couple of early woes, these last few years with some early exits. So they're wanting to buck that trend, are the Huskies. Miami's got some elite guards. Isaiah Wong, Nigel Pack lead that group. And I also like Norchad Omier for Miami. They all have stepped up in the tournament. They all played huge against my Longhorns in the Elite Eight. But have really played well as Miami has progressed through the tournament. So the Hurricanes sitting at 29-7, of course, winners of the ACC. Going up against UConn, 29-8 on the year. There was a stretch during the year in December or early January where they went 2-6 in 8 games, but navigated their way through that. Dan Hurley's done a great job with those guys. There is some concern. Jordan Haskins, I know as far as yesterday was concerned, Thursday and Friday was battling an illness, a non-COVID related illness. So they're hoping he'll be able to play and at least contribute some for the Huskies. That'll go a long way in whether the Huskies are able to run the table and hoist the trophy on Monday night. And Adama Sanogo has been playing very well for the Huskies. So I really like this matchup. I think the FAU San Diego State game has the ability to be closer because of San Diego State's penchant for playing close games and because of their defense. They slow down possessions. They really take the air out of the basketball and really grind things to a halt. And depends if FAU hits their threes or not, or if they're going to be in catch-up mode the rest of the day. But Miami and UConn, 2 explosive teams, plenty of athletes on both sides. I could definitely see this going into the 70s easily. This has the ability to be the game of the weekend, at least for the men's side, because the women's, we had a couple barn burners yesterday. But it also has the higher chance, I think, of it pulling away, of UConn or Miami, making this a double-digit game, with 4 or 5 minutes left and just kind of shutting the door on the other team. But I'm very interested in both of these games. Of course, the Hurricanes made the Elite Eight last year. Jim Larinaga, this is his first Final Four since that George Mason team, but Miami has enjoyed a lot of success. Not quite to the Final Four, but they're becoming a power of the last few years, kind of on that Arkansas, Creighton type grouping, if you will, of teams that are just waiting to bust down the door, but are constantly several rounds deep into the playoffs. They're definitely one of those teams I would put in that category. And then UConn, of course, flirting with that blue blood status, but if you want to put them in, I don't have a problem with it at all. So, but a win here and a win on Monday night would no doubt cement the Huskies as blue blood status in my book. I think they're already there, but to each of their own. So it's going to definitely be an interesting Final Four. I gave my predictions the other day as to who I think would win these 2 semifinals and who would win the championship. I'll go ahead and give scores today. San Diego State, Florida Atlantic. I can't go against the Aztecs defense right now. I know Dusty May has those Owls ready to play, and I know the disrespect for the Owls it seems to be real throughout this entire tournament, and I would hate to do that at all, but I just really love Brian Dutcher and the job he's done defensively with the Aztecs. And if 3-point shooting, and if it's tough sledding from 3-point shooting for FAU, it's going to be a rough night. So I just think San Diego State's going to be able to slow down and play their game, and I think the Aztecs take it. I'm going to say 67-61 Aztecs. For the Miami-UConn game, I'm going to go with the Huskies. It's going to be a little higher scoring game, not by too much, but I still think a close game is in the works. I'm going to go Huskies 75-69 Huskies and have San Diego State-UConn in my championship game. And I will have the Huskies win that game and hoist the trophy Monday night in Houston, in H-Town, in what should be a very awesome Final Four. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And to segue perfectly, they have a hard act to follow because of the 2 games that were yesterday that were the women's national semifinals. Oh my goodness, Iowa knocked off South Carolina. South Carolina 36-0 on the year. They had a 42-game winning streak riding into this game. The 6 games from the year before, the 36 from this year, 42. And Caitlin Clark was not having it. Caitlin Clark, back-to-back 40 burgers in the tournament in the Elite Eight and now in the Final Four. Back-to-back 41-point performances was Caitlin Clark as she led Iowa over South Carolina in a very close game. Came down to the wire. They were both just back and forth. Both these games were back and forth. I was able to only catch a bit of this game because I had to put the kids to bed and, the bedtime routine, two young kids, all that stuff. So I caught as much of it as I could. But what a game. What a game. And for them to knock out South Carolina is huge. Iowa makes their first ever women's national championship game. And they are joined by another team making their national championship debut. That is the LSU Tigers. The job Kim Mulkey's done has been remarkable. Of course, 21 seasons at Baylor, Final Fours, multiple championships, very decorated, very flamboyant. Her dress, of course, you can pick her out from a crowd. I love her. I'm a huge fan of hers. What she's done with LSU, taking them in 2 years to the national championship, has been remarkable. We saw Angel Reese, 24 and 12 last night, double-double. She's just been balling this entire tournament. Alexis Morris actually led the Tigers with 27. So I'm really looking forward to these two. And just the star power between these four has been remarkable. You had Caitlin Clark. You had Aaliyah Boston for South Carolina. Going back a round or so ago, you had Haley Van Lith with Louisville. Even the Cavender twins, even though one plays mostly and one comes off the bench, but the social media and that sort of thing has really put the spotlight on the women, and I'm very, very happy with that, because we have huge star power, well-known coaches, and this isn't even counting UConn. UConn didn't even make the Final Four. UConn was a staple. It seemed like they made it 20 years in a row. Most of those winning championships under Gino Auriemma, but the teams that we have assembled here, and Virginia Tech's gone, and now South Carolina's gone, but you have so many big names, represented in Dallas at the women's Final Four. I think it's just going to be huge for the game. It's going to be huge as these players transition into the WNBA. We found out today, I believe, Maddie Ziegler had already declared for the draft, and Aaliyah Boston just announced that she's declaring for the WNBA draft a couple of hours ago. So hopefully the fans that are created by this Final Four carry over into the WNBA, and you see it, in the views and in social media and in the ratings and stuff like that. So props for the women. Wanted to give them a shout out because they were balling yesterday, and I'm definitely going to watch that LSU Iowa game tomorrow afternoon. I think it tips, if I'm not mistaken, at about 2:30 in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. So I'm definitely going to watch LSU and Iowa. We are guaranteed a brand new women's national champion, a first-time national champion. So can't wait for that. To switch gears to the NFL now. Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, that sort of thing. I touched up on that a few days ago. That's kind of still floating around. Nothing's really gone on there. So what I wanted to do was talk about my Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. I've got, majority of my friends on Facebook and YouTube, stuff like that, are from Texas or are Cowboy and or Texan fans. If, you follow both for some reason. More power to you. But I wanted to touch up on the Cowboys and Texans to see, how they've been doing, what's going on, what's the plan for the draft. Of course, news came out, Stephon Gilmore signed with the Cowboys, corner, to play opposite Trevon Diggs. So I think that is a huge get for the Cowboys. Brandon Cooks was also signed or pulled from Houston in a trade. So having Brandon Cooks, an explosive playmaker. I know he's been in the league quite a while, but I think he can provide that spark opposite CeeDee Lamb and provide some sort of downfield threat for the Cowboys. There's got to be something there, because when Dak doesn't throw downfield and nothing's really, whether it's coach, quarterback, scheme, nothing's really happening downfield. 20 yards plus is almost like no man's land. Nothing's going on outside from someone breaking a couple tackles. So hopefully Cooks can open up the offense in that sense for CeeDee Lamb and those others to really eat. I know we lost Dalton Schultz. The Cowboys lost Dalton Schultz. I think with Jake Ferguson and Pendershot. I couldn't think of his name. Peyton Hendershot. I was drawing a blank there. I think the two of them can fill the role. So I don't think the loss of Schultz will be backbreaking. I know he'll be missed. His production will be missed, but I think between the two of them, they can make up the majority of that production. And I know, of course, Pollard coming back 1 year, got the franchise tag on him. Do you go running back in the draft? The Cowboys hold pick number 26. I know Bijan Robinson is a popular name they're throwing out there. I'm not certain at all that he's going to even be there at 26. The Cowboys may have to move up to get him, and I don't know if you want to do that unless they're really serious for moving on from Tony Pollard. If they're not confident he'll sign, or if they're just happy with the tag and then they're going to move on. So Bijan is definitely an option at 26, although I'm not convinced at all that he's even going to be there. You might want to look at linebacker, edge rusher, Joey Porter from Penn State, Devon Witherspoon from Illinois, or two names that I'm watching out for. I was tracking Jordan Addison from USC before they signed Brandon Cooks. That may be off the table now that Cooks is signed. That could still be an option. Offensive line, I mean, could be an option. But running back will eventually have to be addressed, whether it's later on, with a Jahmyr Gibbs, with a Mo Ibrahim. This running back class seems kind of deep, and on certain mock drafts, you see them going round 2, round 3. Maybe you take a shot on a running back, round 3, round 4. If some of them, those kind of caliber guys are still around, I would definitely take a flyer on one of those, plug him in with Pollard, see what happens, and then go from there next year. So the Cowboys are going to have to hit, though. They will have to hit on this draft because the Eagles, I know they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions. The Lions are improving, by the way. But the Eagles have mostly stayed status quo. That offense is still going to be a threat. The Giants are still going to be a threat. They still have Saquon and Daniel Jones, whether after this year, who knows. And then the Commanders, well, they're the Commanders. We're not too concerned with them. But the Eagles and Giants are up there on the top of the NFC. So if you don't want to drop in the pecking order, further, they're going to need to land somebody that's an immediate starter, an immediate contributor in this draft. And I look at linebacker, edge rusher is probably your best bet. But if Bijan is there, I would be tempted to take him at 26. But let's see what happens. The draft's a month away, and who knows, mock drafts get changed all the time. Now for the Texans. They have pick number 2 and pick number 12. Of course, we all know Carolina traded up to number 1 to take what I'm assuming will be C.J. Stroud, the quarterback from Ohio State. That would leave Bryce Young, the quarterback from Alabama, for Houston. I think he would work well under new head coach DeMeco Ryans. GM knew as of a year or two ago, DeMeco Ryans' new coach, if you get a new quarterback, then you're talking a new team, new system. Let's see how everything plays out. DeMeco Ryans tends to be, is defensive oriented. He comes from San Francisco, so let's see if they can beef up the defense while attending to that horrible offense at the same time. If I'm the Texans, I'm seriously looking, of course, Bryce Young at number 2, but number 12, Quentin Johnston from TCU, the wide receiver from TCU. He and Max Duggan, we know, set the Horned Frogs on fire all the way to the national championship game. And while it didn't go their way, of course, in the title game, they still won a ton of games. They still beat opponents. They won the Big 12 regular season title. And Quentin Johnston, I believe, was a finalist for the Biletnikoff, if I'm not mistaken. He can definitely do damage, I think. So if the Texans were able to land Bryce Young and Quentin Johnston in the first 12 picks, that would go a huge way to building the foundation for that offense under DeMeco Ryans, for them to make waves in the future. That mountain wouldn't seem impossible to climb in 3-4 years because of that division. That division is not impossible to win in a couple of years. Not, of course, not right now, but in a couple of years. With the Jaguars, you got Trevor Lawrence, but there's uncertainty with the Titans. Still no stability at quarterback for the Colts. They're bringing in a new coach. The Titans aren't committing to Malik Willis if and when Tannehill does move on or get pushed out, whatever happens between the two of them. So I'm not convinced that the Texans won't be in the AFC South running in the next 3 years or so. That division seems very easily, winnable. Maybe not winnable, but at least in contention, and maybe for second place in the AFC South, or you can catch a Jacksonville, you can catch an Indy or a Tennessee. So have faith, Texan fans. I know you're still in for a rough couple of years, but if you were to get Bryce Young, Quentin Johnston, I think with the rest of that team and with DeMeco Ryans at the helm, I like him as a coach, and I feel like they can establish a defensive identity and also address the offense at the same time. So I think they'll be in good shape here in the future. Now to WrestleMania. WrestleMania 39. Of course, for those of you who don't follow it too closely, since a couple of years ago, it's been a 2-night event. So it starts tonight and it goes into tomorrow. They split it. That way you don't have this huge 6 or 7 hour marathon that even, big wrestling fans like me were getting burned out 3-4 hours in. We're ready for a break. So I think they did the smart thing. They separated some of the big matches, spread it over 2 nights. You have night 1 tonight, night 2 tomorrow night. They're probably going to run, if I had to guess, about 3 hours each. So it's much more digestible if you're the audience. 3 hours, rest, do what you got to do tomorrow, and then 3 more hours instead of just one big old long event. I think that was definitely the right case. Night 1 tonight, headlined by a trio of matches. I think you can really make a case for two of them to be the main event of tonight. I know one of them, Austin Theory defending the U.S. title against John Cena, was already established as the opening match of WrestleMania weekend. So even though First Take announced it as the headliner, big match because John Cena's there, it's actually going to be the opening match unless something changed while we're airing this podcast, or something broke that I haven't seen in the last couple of hours. Look for Austin Theory, John Cena to open WrestleMania Night 1 for the U.S. title. But that leaves me with Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley for the SmackDown Women's title. And I think the hottest tag team angle we've seen in years. And personally, my opinion, I know the girls bust their ass, as Charlotte and Rhea have done a remarkable job, and they're two of the workhorses and anchors of the women's division. But in terms of story and the characters involved, I really think the Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens for the undisputed tag team titles should main event Night 1 of WrestleMania. We have never had a tag team main event in WrestleMania history. They rarely even main event regular pay-per-views or episodic, shows, episodes of Raw or SmackDown. So I think if you don't do it now, this is never going to happen. So the Usos against Sami and Kevin Owens, this dates back 2 years ago when, of course, with Jey Uso, the bloodline, all that, and Roman Reigns. And then Sami Zayn got wrangled into it being an honorary Us and a member of the bloodline. KO got brought into it because he was feuding with Roman, and he goes back because he was rivals with Sami Zayn. And there's layers upon layers upon layers on this story. So I think they should main event. Some quick predictions for Night 1. I don't know if this is true, but it would cap off WrestleMania weekend, or it would kick off WrestleMania weekend and really make a huge splash if John Cena actually won the U.S. title on Night 1. Didn't immediately jet from WrestleMania, but hung around until Monday Night Raw. He used to have a thing called the U.S. Open Challenge when he was U.S. champ a few years ago. He could lose it on Monday Night Raw and then go off back to Hollywood, do all his movies, commercials, fancy stuff. But I think winning would, of course, send shockwaves through social media and Facebook, Twitter, and all this stuff. I think if he were to win Saturday and then drop it on Monday to either someone debuting from NXT, maybe a new face entirely, or maybe Theory gets it back, who knows. I think that would be the smart move, to have Cena actually win. And as far as the other two, I know there's other matches, but I just wanted to touch up on the main ones. I think Rhea Ripley will beat Charlotte Flair, dethrone her for the SmackDown Women's title. I think Rhea will get shipped over to SmackDown along with all of her stablemates for the Judgment Day. She's got Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Dominic Mysterio make up Judgment Day. I think with two of the three of them in singles matches on the Mania card, I think all of them get shipped to SmackDown with Rhea winning the SmackDown Women's title, dethroning Charlotte. That can open her up for other things, other angles, and really establish Rhea as just the badass that she is on top of the SmackDown mountain. And then I've got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn upsetting the Usos. Or not upsetting the Usos, in the sense that they've never won tag team gold at any level under the WWE umbrella before. So I think they'll take out the Usos, and it'll start the eventual fracture of the bloodline. We may not get a complete implosion at Mania, but it's definitely going to start it. And I would love to see Owens and Zayn hold tag team gold and see what kind of matches, what kind of bangers they put on with different opposition at Mania and beyond. Which brings us to Night 2. Night 2, of course, headlined by Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes for the undisputed WWE title. Bianca Belair defending her Raw Women's title against Asuka. And then I've got in one of my dark horses for sleeper match of WrestleMania weekend, the Intercontinental title defended. 3 hosses going at it. The champ, Gunther, defending against Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. We'll start with that one. That was my pick for match of Night 2. The job Gunther's been doing with the Intercontinental Championship, really establishing it as a workhorse title, has been very, very interesting. Not only has the character on screen, but the work that he's done. If you look at pictures when he was Walter in NXT and in NXT UK into the transformation to Gunther now, the weight loss and the commitment he's made to diet, to exercise, has just been phenomenal. He has motivated me to work out and to start eating right and stuff, because the commitment he's made to his character and to his nutrition and workout regime has just been second to none. Though you can tell he's been busting his tail to do that, and it's been justifiably rewarded with this long Intercontinental title run. Which brings me to the fact that it's a triple threat match and you have storylines with Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, I think Sheamus can win the Intercontinental title here to complete his Grand Slam collection. You know, when you win 4 different titles within WWE, it would complete his story. Gunther would not have to take a pin, and then you could elevate Gunther to the main event scene later to fight different challengers, you know, at SummerSlam and Survivor Series and down the road. It opens that avenue for him. So I'm looking for Sheamus to win here because this would be the perfect opportunity to take the title off Gunther without him getting pinned. It protects the aura of the Ring General, and he can move on to bigger and better things. Bianca Belair and Asuka for the Raw Women's title, 2 just awesome badasses. I know the storyline hasn't totally been there, but you don't really need to tell too big a story with Bianca, just the roughest, the toughest, the baddest. You know, the EST of WWE, just what she's able to do in a ring with this new intimidating, serious persona of Asuka, going back to her Kana days in Japan. Just a more serious, more intimidating force really makes for an interesting matchup. I look for another new champion here. I think Asuka's going to beat Bianca. That would open Bianca up to take on new challengers and new storylines without involving the title. And then you could see the kind of stranglehold Asuka could have on the title like she did in NXT when she went undefeated for about a calendar year and just beat people, opponent after opponent after opponent. So I like Asuka there. And brings us to the main event. I was kind of torn on this because they are very close to 1,000 days as Roman Reigns being the Universal Champ. But I think it's time to crown a new champ. I think Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens as a combined unit will cause the eventual implosion of the bloodline, and it starts at Mania when KO and Sami, I think, take the tag titles on night 1, and I think Cody Rhodes defeats Roman Reigns on night 2. You establish him right away as just the foundation of WWE, the champion who will be there night in and night out. I know Roman's kind of had a schedule where he's in and he's out. You know, he can go take a break, a much needed break. He's been champ for so long. But I just really like Cody Rhodes. I love the character. It brings it full circle. He's never held the WWE title, you know, and he honors the late great Dusty Rhodes, his father, as the one title that eluded him. So that would complete that story arc and would also start to wrap up the bloodline, the eventual fracture, and then feuding probably within the group. So I look forward to this WrestleMania. It's just going to be an awesome card. There's other matches on the card that are worth checking out. Edge, Finn Balor, and Hell in a Cell. You've got a couple WrestleMania showcase matches. Trish Stratus and Lita are back on the card, teaming with Becky to take on Bayley's Damage Control group. Just a lot of matches up and down the card. I can go on and on. It's just going to be a really stacked card at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. So that's the podcast for today. I will be back Wednesday to chat probably fallout of the National Championship games on both the men's and women's side. In the meantime, feel free to shoot us a comment. We love to hear feedback. I love to hear feedback, positive, negative. I don't care. Follow us on all channels. Smash that subscribe, smash that like on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, on Twitter, like us on TikTok. Do whatever you can. We love sports. We love to grow our community. Please help us do the same. My name is Louie. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys Wednesday. Enjoy your weekend.